Leeds United 0, Burnley 1 in the first big major head-to-head of the season amongst the Championship promotion candidates. A game that will frustrate Leeds United, will disappoint them, will annoy them in lots and lots of different ways. As a fan watching the game, incredibly frustrating game, but a game very much broken up into two halves. A first half where Leeds looked like they could score, had created some very, very good chances, and a second half with a lack of ideas, minimal movement, and a slow tempo that we have seen before. Leeds United haunted by ghosts of international past. When we come back from them last year, it just didn't click straight away. And here we are again, coming back from an international break. And again, an underperformance in a part of the game, at the very least, from Leeds. Also, ghosts of last season. This was very similar to what happened with us last year as well. So, two things that will need to be sorted out. There is an international break coming up in a few weeks' time, and Leeds will need to be prepared to come back from that international break in a better state than they did in the second half of this game. Not overly critical on the entire match. I thought Leeds were very, very good in the first half. I thought they dominated the possession. They had all the right areas with the ball. They had a good tempo, statistically very good as well, and created probably two of the best chances in the game. We'll go through them in a bit more detail in a second. From an overall game perspective, the statistics of the game lean very heavily in Leeds' side, and I'm sure Daniel Farke will talk about them. 72% possession for Leeds United against a promotion rival. 17 shots versus 7 to Burnley. 4 on target from Leeds, and there is a problem. Leeds having 17 shots on goal, only 4 of them managing to hit the target, and Burnley putting 1 of their 3 away. On the countdown to kick off this morning, we talked about the point of you cannot let Burnley get counterattacks on you or they will score. They're very clinical in those areas. Leeds in the passing areas completely outpassed Burnley. 629 passes to 257, which on paper is crazy, with an 88% passing accuracy versus a Burnley's 70% passing accuracy. This was very much a one chance take it, win the game situation for Burnley, because on paper Leeds did everything they needed to do to win the game. The issue was turning the 0 into a 1 or a 2. If we go through the big moments of the game in the first half, very, very early on, Mateo Joseph has a fantastic 1v1 opportunity to score, and should score. There is no explanation for the miss. He is 1v1 straight ahead to keeper, opens his body up too much and drags the ball wide, and a massive opportunity for Leeds to get in front. Then Willie Gnonto has a chance to put Leeds 1 up after a lovely no-look pass again from Brendan Aronson that cuts the defence open. Gnonto gets in behind and can't roll the ball around the keeper. Instead, kicks it straight at the keeper's chest to keep it at the score. Then Leeds have a long-range shot from Ilya Gruev, which is a decent shot on target from distance, but the keeper saw it the whole way. And then there's a massive moment in the game for me where Manor Solomon goes into the box directly in front of the referee, and for me gets taken from behind from the defender, and it should have been a penalty to Leeds United. The referee giving a corner kick instead to Leeds, but booking Hannibal for his reaction after the call, going head to head with Manor Solomon. The more you look at it, the player may have got some contact on the ball, but he has to come through the back of the player in order to get that touch on the ball. And for me, I think for the commentators watching the game as well, that's a penalty all day for Leeds United and wasn't given. It's a huge moment, but you can't rely on referee decisions to win your game. Leeds needed to look after their own stuff, and they didn't. And towards the middle of the first half, Manor Solomon gets the ball on the left hand side, slips, and then away they go with Kolyosho, who runs down the right hand side. And there's a smart bit of defending from Leeds where they kind of let him run a little bit on the wing before coming over too early to not create space in the middle. They got caught with Sammy Smodux with that move last year, but by the time Bogle gets across, Kolyosho uses his body very well to find the bottom corner through Bogle's legs into the corner. So there's no one really to blame for that goal. What I would say, if Leeds are going to play two central defensive holding midfielders, that when Leeds lose the ball in those areas, that's their job. They should both be coming across. They're too far up the pitch. They're both ahead of the play. If you're going to have two of those players, one at least has to be able to stay and cover the back line. That didn't happen in that situation. And they scored a goal in what was the only real clear chance that they had to get anything from the game. And Leeds, unfortunately, didn't manage to do anything to get back into the game after that. The second half was a non-event. It was a lot of ball passing left and right from Leeds. Very frustrating towards the end of the game when the defenders kept going back to the goalkeeper. Some of the explanation on that also for me leads into the biggest problem with the second half, and that's a complete lack of movement from anybody off the ball for Leeds United. It's static. People are standing in positions. The player that's on the ball doesn't have players coming looking for the ball. And a lot of this happened after Brendan Aronson was taken off the park, which was a change for me that I didn't agree with. I would have left Aronson very much on the pitch, as he was one of the few players that was picking the ball up in that hole in the middle of the park. But it seemed to fall away there. All the key moments in the second half didn't go our way. Our key moments when we were breaking and had opportunities, the passes into players were either slightly behind them, bobbling on the air, or just too slow to them to get onto in any kind of momentum, and that really did stop Leeds' attack quite a lot. If you go through the team, and this is where it gets different, this is for me where I think there's a lot of positives to take from the game outside of that big ugly result right there. But from a defensive perspective, I thought there was massive improvements from the previous games. I thought Jayden Bogle was fine in the game outside of the effort to block, but then that's all he's trying to do is trying to block his shots. So you can't give him a huge amount of stick for that. I thought Joe Rodon and Pascal Stoke were very good in the centre together. I thought after one maybe dodgy moment at the start of the first half, I thought Junior Firpo had a fine game as well, went off in the second half. From a midfield perspective, for me, I actually thought it was Ethan Ampadu's best game in the Leeds shirt this season. I thought he was far more advanced than he has been in recent games. I thought he moved the ball a lot quicker than he has done, and he looked to get into positions where he could shoot, which toward the back end of last season, even as a centre-back, we saw Ampadu pushing into those areas to have a strike. He did have a strike, and he sliced a couple of them, but at least he's in those areas. But I thought he was fine, and he goes off. Gruev, I thought, had a very good game in the middle of the park. The midfield, the centre midfield for Leeds just wasn't a massive issue for me at all. The wingers were where it gets a bit interesting, because it comes down to not necessarily how they played, but what opportunities they got to deliver today. I thought they were both fine. I thought Solomon had a good game. I thought Nonto was looking busy. First half of the first half, we didn't go down the right hand side. Everything was on the left hand side again than it was last year. So a lot of similarities and not good ones. When the ball did eventually go over to Willie Nonto, the passes were either behind him or in an area where there was no space. Leeds didn't get the ball into the channels and into space quickly enough to benefit from the two wingers. At times, I also thought both wingers were probably a little bit too high and got rid of that space, pushed defenders into that area where they could have held their runs a little bit earlier, but that's minor criticism. I think outside of that, they were both fine. It's more a case of players being able to find them early enough, and there were plenty of opportunities to get them in where we just took an extra touch, or we went backwards a pass, or we went the other way when it was on to go into the space, and that was an issue for me. Brendan Aronson, the 10, I thought was fine, had a good game today. Should have had an assist for a lovely no-look pass to Willie Nonto. And then Mateo Joseph up top looked a little bit off it compared to usual. His touch wasn't as good. It was bouncing off him a little bit. It was getting away from him. Obviously, he misses the chance, and I wonder, does that chance come so early to him that when he misses that, the rest of the game is just a little bit, that moment's playing around in his head and putting him off the rest of his game. So that can happen with young players, but you hope he can bounce back from it pretty quickly. Not a bad game by any any stretch of the imagination, but just, issues in there. The changes for me were interesting as well. I didn't necessarily agree with them. They didn't have the impact, and for me, the way Daniel Farke broke them up was the way he should have broken his changes up when Leeds lost to Middlesbrough in the Cup, in an attempt to slow the game down, because that's what it did. But making the three blocks as they were, it basically broke the game down at a time frame in the game that really did suit Burnley. The first set of changes were Rothwell and Pirro coming on. Fine, no massive issues with them coming on. Emerson and Ampadu then come on. Ampadu, I'm assuming it's got to do with the ankle knock that he got with the tackle. And then Aronson, I'd left him on. I wouldn't have taken him off. A creative player. We go with Joel Peru, and Daniel Farke is determined to be proven right on Joel Peru as a number 10, but he ends up playing nearly as another striker, and Leeds just lack that player and that drop in, that player that can drop into that area to pick the ball up off the defenders. And if you look at the last 10 minutes of the game, every time the back four got the ball and turned to look out, there was no option forward. They had to go backwards, and that was causing frustration in Ellen Road and frustration for me and everybody else. But a lot of that comes down to Joel Pirro being a player that's too high, and we needed a 10 in there, and there wasn't a 10 in there, and it doesn't work for me, to be very honest. Byron comes on for Solomon, and it was a strange one for me. Firpo comes off as well. Firpo, I'm assuming, is a knock, but Byron was a strange decision to make at that point in the game. I thought if Firpo's not got a knock, why we're making defensive changes? And then you bring on out Tanaka in the 86th minute, and sure, look, at that stage the game is gone. What's the point in bringing him on? And you bring him on for Joe Rodon because he's a head injury, not because you're trying to impact the game. So there's issues there for me in terms of the decision making from Leeds today. The tempo is still an issue for me. It needs to be sorted in the right areas. They've got to release the ball at certain times. But outside of that, Burnley hadn't have scored. It's a very decent performance by Leeds United. It doesn't sound like it the way I'm saying it, but it's a very decent performance by Leeds. And there was opportunities in that first half. Leeds need to take their opportunities. Your young player playing up front, we all backed Mateo Joseph. He will learn from that opportunity. But Leeds will lose, unfortunately. It's a massive game. The only, I suppose, attempt at finding some silver lining in the cloud of the result is the fact that Leeds did beat Leicester at home and away last year and didn't get promoted, and they did. So maybe it doesn't really matter against Burnley. it'll matter more against teams that we should be beating, and that was what it will come down to. But improvements needed by Leeds. There will be an international break in a few weeks' time. Leeds will need to come back from it in a better situation than they did with this one. And we need to see more impact from the subs coming on the bench, and we need to see a team that has more ideas. We saw a bit of a low block from Burnley, not a complete low block, but a bit of a low block from Burnley. And again, Leeds didn't have any ideas around how to break that up after they'd taken off the number 10. So that's going to be it for me, folks. Look, it's a disappointing game. Let me know down in the comments how you felt about it. The result was disappointing. The performance was okay. But ultimately, results matter. So it's a disappointing weekend for Leeds, and we'll hope that some results go our way over the course of the week to keep the bigger teams away. And maybe Sunderland dropping some points this week would be great, but we have to wait and see. Folks, that'll be it for me. I will talk to you on Monday morning for more Leeds news, and we will have a proper match day review out later on in the week. Talk to you later. See you. Bye.